Start your day. FM, Nairobi.
All right, now that we've had a session with Fire Extinguishers Are Us, we continue into conversations that we're having this morning. 10 minutes after 8 o'clock, it's the 15th of May, and this is the Situation Room. Ndu and Joe with you this morning. We continue in our live streams. They're up on YouTube, Facebook, and on X, our audience on KTN. Thank you for keeping ear with us. And we're looking into the politics of numbers this hour, and we continue our conversation because the game is interesting, of by-elections and State House expenditure. We're having those questions today. It seems that there are numbers flying all over the place at us, whether we're looking at who did what and who won where, and what you wake up to in terms of costs and what exactly it all means, this game of numbers. And so we'll have two who join us in the studio today. One of them is already here. Wajiko Thiga is the National Youth Leader of DCP. Good morning, Wajiko.
Good morning. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm very well.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you for being here this morning. We're looking into some of these things that everybody should be part of a national dialogue, especially when it comes to, conversations around where the country essentially is going. Also joined this morning by Advice Mundalo, who is Leadership and Communication Specialist. Good morning, Advice.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Thank you for being here this morning, both of you.
Asante.
We, as you know, go around the African continent every week. We come back with proverbs from a particular country. This week has put us in Eswatini. The Kingdom of Eswatini has had some fun proverbs this week, and we'd love to get your interpretation of this one. A person whose heart is not content is like a snake which tries to swallow an elephant. A person whose heart is not content is like a snake which tries to swallow an elephant. Wajiko, what do you think of that?
I think it's speaking about greed and that you can never satisfy greed. And there's never enough for a greedy heart, a greedy person. It keeps taking and taking and taking. And, we can just even reflect with our communities today, especially about our public paths. We find people taking and taking. And that's why I think that's a lot of young people are running for office, so that we can be able now to start sealing the loopholes that we have, where people are able to, siphon public paths.
Yeah. Advice, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you. I think the good proverb simply means hate is a bad driver. It can drive you to places that you cannot even bring yourself back from. Because once you are driven by hate, you will go to abnormal extents. That's why you will start trying to do the abnormal. So it simply tells us that we must be modest. And in everything, as we try to deal with every other issue, we must ensure that our driving element of it is not hate or the desire to feel ourselves too much. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yesterday we had a conversation around whether these by-elections are a litmus test or a bit of a precursor to what is going to happen come 2027. The by-election that took place yesterday, from all indications, looks like the UDA candidate is going to be declared winner by the IEBC this morning. Of course, going into the night yesterday, it looked like that's what the numbers were. Unofficial results are telling us this. And folks are still holding on to that if you see a by-election that gives you a particular winner, then it's indicative of what could happen in the future and what exactly this means. That we're looking at the numbers and how much do they matter, Wajiko?
I will start by, even if it's not like officially communicated, but I want to just congratulate the UDA candidate for Imura Dikir. Results shows that he won. And I want to really, really appreciate my political party, DCP, and my party leader for, having the guts to field a candidate in Ruto's bedroom. And DCP indicates that we had around 10,000 votes against UDA candidate who had about 18,000 votes. And this, for me, what does this show? It shows that there's boldness in politics. And that's what politics is about, to field candidates wherever across the country.
Yeah.
Number two, we are now moving to issue-based politics. This is in Rift Valley, and we managed to garner about 10,000 votes. So this shows that, the common citizen now is moving away from, political rhetoric and back to issue-based politics.
Is it?
Yes.
What issue?
Our candidate back in Emurua Dikir, we had our Honorable Masikonde, who's also in Narok. They talked about the issues of the community of Emurua Dikir and what they will be able to do for them. And being able to, DCP being a new political party, and let me say that we just turned one, so happy birthday, DCP.
Okay.
We just turned one, and a new political party wading waters in a space that is not very favorable for DCP is showing that, and being able to garner 10,000 votes is showing that people are starting to listen. People want change. People want an alternative voice or an alternative government that listens to them. And now, for me, I'm very hopeful for 2027 because as much as we've done this by elections, and it is a referendum for change. People are showing that they want change. They want, different voices. They want people who listen to them. And then that means and puts politicians who are going to vie in 2027 that they know that political rhetoric will not take them anywhere. So for me, I know young people do not show up for by-elections. I know that question will come. But also, this is to show young people's political consciousness was risen in 2024. This is an electoral cycle this is the first electoral cycle they are coming into contact with. So issues like by-elections are not things they're keen about. They're keen about the general election. But should we have any other new by-elections that will happen before 2027 reaches? My message is just to let young people know by-elections are also as important as a general election.
Advice, do you think that people are looking towards the ideological now on, as opposed to the political rhetoric that usually claim the day or who has put something in their pocket? Are people actually ideology facing, and could this be an indication of what would happen in 2027?
Thank you very much, Ndu. I think, first of all, I really agree. I couldn't agree more with Wanjiku, especially that coming from Wanjiku, that people are starting to be ideologically driven. Our politics, as we continue, every other time you realize that we might not be at 100% yet. But the rate at which the people want the conversation on issues is growing every other day. And that's why even today, when you check across social media, when you sit in the bars and other places, there is one thing that continues to come out, both from the people who are pro-government and those who are against government. They will continue telling you, okay, fine, but what exactly are we propagating? We as an opposition, and you realize people are asking themselves, what is the opposition offering as an alternative plan? So I agree that in truth, there is a rise in the level at which people want issue-based conversation. That's what is given. It might not be at 100%. We might not get there necessarily in the next election, but it started in 2022. The conversation started being more or less about what people are going to do, and it's moving forward. Now, when you look at your next question about our by-elections indicators, and I've always said, and I've said it even here, that by-elections have always been indicators to the general election. It has happened before, it will happen again. When I was in Jubilee, and the person who replaced me in Jubilee was just here with you this morning, and at that time, when we were moving towards the by-elections, we lost all by-elections, and we were government, and we were the ruling party. And we came up with all manner of excuses on why we lost those by-elections. True as it could be, we went to the election and still lost. So the by-elections that are happening today, when you see the results of those by-elections today, they should be able to start showing you what is going to happen in the general election. Remember, the by-elections are not just happening in one region. They're happening in cross-section parts of this country. So it is true that it's actually an indicator. And like what happened in Emurua Dikir yesterday, for me, first of all, it was a show of a lot of gust for DCP to actually field a candidate. And getting 10,000 votes in Emurua was no mean achievement. For DCP, it simply shows that you have some level of confidence that some people are having towards your political party, especially being an area that is a stronghold of the president. Okay. But it is also important to put it in context that Emurua Dikir is also one of the unique constituencies that we have in the Republic of Kenya. When you look at the 2022 election, the vote difference between Ngeno and the second was roughly about less than 5,000 votes, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, so percentage-wise, that would be very high, probably almost 60-70%. But when you come to the cumulative vote of then the president vis-a-vis Raila Odinga, Ruto still got 93%. So it is quite a tricky kind of constituency. You look at even the nominations in UDA, and there was a very tight race between the gentleman Blue, who was my favorite candidate because he's a young person, and the current winner. It was quite a tight race. So it also shows you that some parts of this country are extremely politically active, and they zero in on the candidate, and not necessarily just the political parties. They zero in on the candidate when it comes to their local issues. Yeah.
Interesting. But sometimes I feel we focus on the result and the outcome. We forget the process.
Yeah.
Right now, we are gearing up to the general election next year, And of ultimate concern to every political player is the process. We keep talking about the IBC, and all the other players. What's your take on the process, especially on this, that was just concluded yesterday, the Muradikir? Because concerns were raised. We saw concerns from Kaspul, Malava, Mbeere North, and they seem to keep on repeating themselves. And we all know it is an effort of the different political formations to just assert their authority, their control. And as they do that, they tend to violate the law, the electoral laws that we do have. But what's your take on the process? Even as you congratulate the winner, even as you're happy about the outcome, but what's your take on the process?
That's a very great question, because naturally people don't look at the process. We always look at the outcome. And I want to look at how, even as a political party, DCP, we came out, we had a candidate, first of all, because we had several. And we had to, sit down and have a consensus on which candidate was going to be the flag bearer of DCP. And then going back to the ground and looking at how...
You did not carry out... voting.
No.
It was a consensus building.
Yes, it was a consensus. In all Kalau, that's where we had a nomination. Okay. We conducted nominations. And I want to we look at back in the Muradikir because maybe because this is what has been concluded right now, and look at the campaign and how campaigns were done. And if you could see photos from Muradikir, and just talk about even the commercialization of politics that has been such a vice in this country. Muradikir was very different. DCP party is a new party, and we don't even draw funds from political parties fund. But in that community, they understood that we don't have merchandise. So they will buy, the Uhuru bags and wear them, the green bags. And for them, it wasn't about, I have to have merchandise, you have to give me something so that I'm able to vote you in. They wanted change for them. And I saw them, receiving this young man. Our candidate was about 35, 36 years old. And for them, they didn't think about how much money they can get from this candidate. They just wanted to show up for their son. And they just needed somebody as fierce as Ngong used to be. And I watched them. It was a very interesting. I did not have the opportunity to go there, but I kept following up and, making calls with people who are, doing the campaigns down there. And for them, this process, they didn't even look at the governor. They didn't look about the woman. They didn't want to be involved in their politics. They said, for us, we don't care about who the government is supporting or not. It's about this particular candidate. And I could see, we didn't see the usual UDA, strongholds going on ground. We didn't see Farouk Kibet there. We didn't see them. Muradikir didn't want foreigners in their politics. For them, the process was all about them, and they really prioritized what they want. So for me, I was really happy to see politics wasn't commercialized. In at least for our political party, we didn't get to spend, and we also don't have that money. But we saw them wearing Uhuru bags on their head, sitting down, listening to our candidate, and I think for me, it changed me. If Muradikir can do that, and advice has said it's such a unique constituency, it's true. I hope that as Kenyans, all constituencies can adopt this model.
If that's the case, and now looking at numbers, because that's what we're saying, that if there really is a clawing towards the ideology and the issues that Kenyans are getting to a point, because like we said, it's indicative, and not just in the results, indicative by the process of what has been happening, or the idealism around a political process. If that's the case, and this thing is catching on like wildfire, why didn't we see the vote for that change? And I'm saying this in terms of the results now.
I want to say, and that's a critical question, people still vote along political parties. And you know, political parties are a system, and this country, Kenya, is run through a strict system. And us as DCP, this was a new political party introducing in Emurua Dikir. And you see, UDA is the current ruling party, and they have the resources, the machinery. And we've seen a lot of them using heavy budgets to be able to influence outcomes in politics. And you cannot excuse, I cannot, really blame the voter, because look at the kind of life we have today. The cost of living is very high. People are selling their IDs. You sell your ID, you don't show up to vote, but you're given something in return. And I think this has been done intentionally by this government so that they're able to manipulate voters. Just like Mbere. Mbere was also a very, economically disadvantaged area. People are really poor. Their poverty is there. So when you introduce heavy sums of money, then you get to influence their decision. So, and you see, many people feel that my issues are not addressed. When I vote for somebody, they leave and they never come back. So let me sort myself. As you, when you get your seat, you go sort yourself out. So I want to say, it is not everybody is embracing this, but we're seeing considerable percentage of people doing it. And I hope by 2027, everybody will be on board that politics must be issue-based and not even personality-centered and not even political party-centered. But I know that at the end of the day, political parties, people vote along political parties. So for us, even as DCP party, we must be able to sell our agenda so that people are able to see, why should I vote for a candidate in DCP?
And we'll come to the agenda issue. Advice.
Yes.
As you comment on the process, your view on the process, do you feel this was a win for the party or for the people? In that, if the candidate that won was in another party, would have been the people's choice, or did he win because he was in that political formation?
That's quite an interesting question. I think let me start with your question process. And election process is very, very important. If no one better than the Supreme Court has actually assured us that, because at one point we have had our election nullified on the basis of not the numbers, but the process. So it's a very, very important thing. But then what does the process mean? Process actually is about three people in an election: the IEBC, the political parties, and the candidate. The person with the highest responsibility among all these people is the IEBC. The IEBC is the body that we all put our money to so that they can be able to manage the election. And therefore, they must be able to inspire sufficient levels of confidence in the voter. And I've kept saying that as we move towards the general election, it is not about sometimes how fair the election will be. It's about how the people will perceive the referee to be fair. So they must actually do a lot of work in that. And number two is the political parties, because they're the ones who are the custodians. They're the ones who take people to the election. One of the things that I give it to UDA that they have really tried to do is that in all the by-elections, they have always had nominations. So they have always tried to take this power back to the people to pick the candidates. This is one of the things that ate us very badly when I was in Jubilee, that in every by-election, we actually picked the candidates by consensus, and it came back to bite us. So the moment you keep taking the responsibility of choice back to the people, it speaks about how much you actually want to value their opinion. And on that one, in comparison to other political parties, they are really doing very good at that. ODM has also been having that teething issue of direct tickets and giving people directly. And then there's the third issue of the politicians. And we must understand that politicians always take a political stand, not necessarily a factual stand. And that's why there will always be an excuse for an election lost, according to a politician. First of all, there's no politician who loses election fairly. All politicians, in fact, are always position 2 in the election. I have run for election before, and not many people even know the position I came. They just know I was second. Because at the end of the day, you must give your people an argument that sustains you for the next election. And that's why you'll realize that miraculously in the Emurua Dikir by-election, we are not talking about the votes having been rigged. Why? Because there is a better conversation on percentage. So opposition would rather have a conversation on percentage because they feel like this percentage, perception-wise, it paints a good picture. After all, the people didn't even expect us to win. So why can't we have this conversation about percentage? But when you go to Mbeere, where they are expected to win, when they lose, they tell you, no, the election was rigged. So that is the selective amnesia that politicians will always operate with. That when it favors them, they will always look for the point that will favor them. When it doesn't, then that is exactly the point. That's why today, you're not going... I remember I was here, I think it was after one of the by-elections, and the cornerstone of the conversation here was that there was state machinery. The election was rigged and all that. So I wonder, where has state machinery disappeared to Nemurwa Dikir? Where has money disappeared to Nemurwa Dikir? It is because politicians always argue the point that gives them the premium at that particular level. And that's why I've always argued that Kenyan elections are not rigged. There is even no possibility. There is no possibility. The truth is that those ones who prepare the best for election will win. And that's where UDA has continued to beat opposition. That UDA has continued to be better prepared for the by-elections. And there's a question that Ndu talked about, that might we be speaking from both ends of our mouth when we are saying there is ideology-driven politics, and then you ask, but where was the change in the vote result? And I thought that was very interesting because, number one, change does not always mean, Ndu, that people must vote out government. Sometimes that is the change that they have actually voted for. So sometimes there is change according to what we think and what the people actually think. And when you talk about ideology-driven politics, which is the cornerstone, and you said you'll get to that, people are asking themselves, who exactly, when I'm voting for these people, what is their driving force? They're asking themselves, this DCP, what is their ideology on education? What is their ideology on health? What is their policy on foreign relations? And they can't see. And the moment the conversation goes that way, still government and the ruling party continues to be the one leading the conversation in terms of the ideology. They can be able to say, this is what we have done. This is what we plan to do. Some might not like it, some might like it, but at least this is our plan. And so people are asking, what is the alternative plan? And then you ask me about who is the winner? Is it the political party? Is it the candidate? And I'll tell you that in all by-elections, the winners are always the political parties. In all by-elections. Because the contest there majorly is always about the political parties, because the political parties are always preparing for the general election. And so every by-election is a litmus test. And that's why when you look at the percentage level, most winners of by-elections lose general elections. Because when it comes to general elections, the story now centers down to you and it moves then away from the political party.
Most of the time. Most winners of by-elections will lose the general election. Okay, this is interesting because we may forget that even the by-election that happened, the ones that happened last year, the one that happened earlier this year, this one, the one that is going to happen in a couple of weeks, the one that will happen in July. These folks are not going to be there for 5 years. They will have to, if they want to, attempt to retain their seat come 2027. So the folks who are getting into these parties today, getting into these positions, only have about a year to go. And that they may, if they feel the need, try to defend their position. So are you saying that there's a possibility that the folks who have won, this one for today, is going to have a rough time retaining that seat, number one, and number two, then is going to probably have to start campaigning now to remain there come 2027?
It is about, election is about momentum. Now, you win an election 1 year, is actually exactly 1 year, 2 months to the next election. After you win, there is a heavy expectation on the people. There is a miracle that the people expect you to perform since you are now in office. The person who loses to you continues with the campaign. Okay? So they don't take a rest. They continue the campaign. So your audit starts immediately. Like you win election on Sunday. On Monday, the person who came second is in a funeral somewhere asking people whether they have received bursary. And you won on Sunday. Now, momentum building there. People are not going to understand the issue of process, that there is a time, then you have to be sworn in, and then there's budget estimates and all these things. These are nice talk show conversations. But when you go down to the ground, the expectation is delivery. And that's why you'll realize that most of the time after the winners, these people win these by-elections. In the general election, even their own political parties that they won on, if they are not very careful and if they don't really do a very good political job, then even the political party changes the candidate most of the time, because then it subjects you back to those nominations, the same nominations. I would want to argue that if you take that gentleman called Blue in Emuru Adikir back to nominations in 2022 with the gentleman who has won election in 2027, back to the same UDA nomination, I argue that that gentleman will win that nomination. Why? Because he will not have burden of responsibility. And this one will now be having something we can blame him about. Because in any election, the incumbent is always the person who is easiest to defeat. Why? Because he has something that you can blame him about.
But so what time does is that it gifts this incumbent a position whereby nobody has to fault him or her. Time in this case, the shortness of it has gifted this person an almost direct entry into the position, because there's really not much that you're going to say did this person do or not do in a year.
No. There's always something that someone did not do. Because on the ground...
But I'm coming based on your argument where you said that an incumbent at a by-election usually will have a better position because there's very little that you can blame them for. So are we saying that that very little blame comes from the shortness of time that they've been in that position, or where does it come from?
I don't think you got me right, Ndu. I said the incumbent will always be the person who has what you can blame them for.
But in this case, these ones won't have that.
They will, because the burden of blame, Ndu, is not on the reality of the subject matter. It is just on the fact that you are the one in office. The moment you get into office, it's like my sister here. She holds substantive office. She leads the young people of DCP. So she has a burden of responsibility. So when it comes to matters young people, when me and her go to I am more likely to win that conversation because I have no burden of responsibility. We can blame her for anything. We can say, why aren't young people being given tickets to run? There is always something that someone in office will always be blamed about, whether it's practical or not. I've sat in a political party. I know the bandwidth of the power of a youth leader. I know it. But when you come outside here to the people don't care. The people are going to give you party leader problems for you to solve. The people are going to give you secretary general problems for you to solve. The people are going to come on the show and argue with you like you are the party leader of that party. Even the people, the aspirants, will call you from all walks of life. People who want to be governor will still call the youth leader to tell them that they need the ticket for that seat. And they will not want the conversation that, you know what, this is exactly what I do. There are some excesses, that there are places I cannot be able to do. And that's what I'm telling you. The moment you are an income, the moment you get, from yesterday, the moment they were, forget the IBC declaration, just the UDA page declaration. They declared them winners on the page.
Yes, they did.
From that day, they became incumbents. From today morning, people want results. I can assure you. Most of those winners today morning, they have people who are in their homes, they want bursary.
Now, it's interesting because, again, if you to whom much is given, much is expected. So it's a burden for them to bear.
Yeah, sure.
But also there's the element of now, as you rightly put it, some of the winners may not come back. But if it's a win now for the party, what does that say about the party? You know, so there are all those implications. There are many analyses we could take on that. But I want to talk about the numbers.
Yeah.
Numbers are changing. Well, beginning with the fuel prices. Going to the budget for the State House, right? We just come off from that spending spree of the campaign, and I'm sure we're going to see more because of the upcoming one in July. But the country is also in a crisis because you see a shortage. I think 56.7 billion have not been dispersed to education. 53.7 thereabouts.
Yes.
So we are juggling a lot. And politics ought to be the art of us organizing our society so that we can manage ourselves better.
True. You
dare say her party does not have an agenda, and if they do, it is not visible. Yeah. So, and perhaps that's why people, according to him, were of the opinion, maybe this candidate might be good, but since they're running on this party, what does it stand to offer us, the people, given the challenges we are facing? Which takes now the conversation to an issue-based conversation. But as we look at all that, where would we say, because you're in a party that is seeking to enter the arena, you've done efforts, you've gone for by-elections, you've won some, you've lost others, but where would you say the conversation ought to head nationally? because the party you are subscribed to has been accused of being sort of a regionally affiliated, strongly so. But then the issues we are dealing with, the numbers we are looking at, when you talk about any issue, it cuts across the entire nation. Where do you find the balance between you as a young person who wants change for the country and perhaps being in a party whereby people say this party does not speak to us nationally? Where do you find the balance?
Thank you for the question. I'll first start by responding to advice and his talk on us not complaining about state machinery at Amuro and so on and so forth. First of all, I want just to congratulate IEBC. It has really, honestly, done a good job. Even with our All Kalau by-elections, they really showed up for DCP.
Nominations, not by-elections.
Yes, because they're the ones who supported, sorry.
Yes.
All Kalau split.
Yeah. You see, even the police at All Kalau, they really were there. We had about 2 or 3 per polling center, and at our tallying center, we also received really great security. Okay. So we've seen change from, and you see, as DCP, we've always had, we've faced the brand from the police with our rallies and everything, and we've always communicated to DIGA and the IG that we want police to protect us like they protect every Kenyan. And we've seen a change in it. In the Murwa Dikir, I want to say that we had also interference. In the morning, I think Kapsasian and Cheleme, we had goons affecting the voter turnout in the morning. And this was something that we expected. And within short time, police were able to mediate. So there's change. And IBC was able to conduct a free and fair process. And that's why even when looking at their budget for 2027, you won't find me even having a problem with it, by the way, because at the end of the day, what we want as Kenya is a free and fair nomination process. If this is the budget they're asking for, to give us a free and fair nomination process, then as DCP party, we should support that. And at this moment, I really am supporting IBC for that budget. But coming back to...
they've asked for a raise to 71
they
billion.
They have. I have seen it.
Yeah.
But for me, if for us to have a free nomination, because already the talks about rigging, you've seen so many politicians talking about how they're going to rig this process. For me, each Kenyan, what Kenyans want in 2027 is just a free and fair process. And then that means that there will be no, violence because if people rig elections, then the people will revolt. So if IBC is demanding for this amount to give us a free and fair nomination, then for me, so be it. But can you be accountable to that money?
Okay.
And can we have that process fair? So that as hatutaki watu wa rig, because the ground for us, we are really decided on who we want in 2027. Number 2, to speak about political parties and, DCP being, we are the shadow government. And are we speaking, nationally to Kenyans? That is a very fair question. And to speak about, DCP being a regionally based, like every political party, you have your own strong support base. And DCP's strong support base is from Mount Kenya. But are we fielding candidates everywhere? Yes, we are. We have an MCA today in Kakamega. We have an MCA in Narok. We have an MCA in Nairobi. Actually, we fielded and we won. We fielded in Murwa Dikir. We are speaking to every Kenyan. And this is to show that Kenyans are listening to the message of DCP.
What is that message? Incidentally,
our overarching message is that we want to reset Kenya. That is our overarching message. We want to reset Kenya. But there are healthcare gaps. Education is becoming, unaffordable in this country. Mental health. Yesterday we just lost Maribel through suicide. She was struggling with, and she was struggling, publicly with bipolar 1 disorder. Mental health is something that as DCP will take very, very critically, because I am a young person and this is a youth agenda for me. And it's young people who are committing suicide. Substance abuse is on the rise. And our party leader, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, has been a keen and a strong fighter of, illicit brew in this country. And that is where young people have turned to. High cost of living. We want to do this. And look at fuel prices today. In fact, I will say we cancelled the G2G today because this single sourcing is leaving to only one person who's controlling fuel prices in Kenya. If we now cancel it and allow multiple players to come into the field, then it's going to be competitive, and then we're going to get best fuel prices. So for us, DCP wants to reset Kenya.
Well, there is your advice. Do you feel inclined that you'll be reset?
Resetting Kenya is not a political ideology.
Right.
And I talked about political ideology, that you must be anchored on something. What is your promise? You can't just say reset. Yeah? You must be able to really have tangible deliverables. When you say reset Kenya, what do you mean about the education sector? DCP must explain that when we say we are to reset Kenya, which setting is this that Kenya has that is wrong?
No, with time
Therefore, they want to reset. So we must be able to hear them on education. We must be able to hear them on foreign policy. We must be able to hear them on health. We must be able to hear what are their alternatives. Remember, we are coming from an opposition that was very well led by Raila Odinga. Remember those days when Raila would be able to tell us that when the budgets come out, and they would be able to say, this is our proposed alternative budget. When you're talking about the taxes, we are saying, fine, the taxes still need to be there because you must collect money, but this is what we think is our alternative. On matters of devolution, this is what we think should actually be done. Raila Odinga died saying that I think CDF should be able to be scrapped and this should be able to be taken back to county governments. Not a very popular opinion, because at the end of the day, ideology is not popularity. It's not a popularity contest. It's a depth contest. And that is where most opposition do not want to have this conversation. They don't want the depth conversation. I'm happy that my friend Wajiku says Kenyans are listening to DCP, and that is based on the number of by-elections they have won. Okay? So every place that DCP has won, the election was free and fair. Every place that they have not won.
There are places where we've had a real fight.
So the issue is this, that if, and I agree with her, that where they have won, it's true that Kenyans are listening to DCP. But in equal measure, then that will be able to mean that when you contrast DCP and UDA, Kenyans are listening more to UDA than DCP, because UDA has won the majority of the by-elections.
If you were going by that formula.
If you're going by her formula.
Okay.
If we're going by her formula, then Kenyans are actually listening more to UDA, because UDA has won more of those by-elections, including in the strongholds of DCP, or the so-called strongholds of DCP. Remember, DCP is celebrating a 30% penetration in the stronghold of their opponent. But their opponent has been winning in their stronghold. So if you go by that argument, it simply means that they are actually succumbing to the reality that in truth, UDA is actually way ahead of them. Not by my words, but by the DCP's words, which is actually, in my view, a fair judgment, because that's just being truthful. And they have championed themselves.
To say something.
They have championed themselves as truthful people. And I'm very glad that they're actually being extremely truthful, because in all truth and honesty, by-elections being looked at, Kenyans are listening more to UDA than DCP. Actually, Kenyans have only listened to DCP in a ward in Kakamega.
Not in a concept.
Listening to, but not listening to.
As you come in, Wanjiku.
Okay.
He says reset is not a policy. Reset is not a formula. And if Kenyans are listening, then it would appear, if you go by the numbers, he could be right. But is the reset formula, agenda you're talking about, less popular than the, what do you call it, the one, what, I don't know what the formula for UDA is, but let's say season 2. Okay. And if we are going that the party is winning because of the ideology the party stands for, what does that speak about your reset?
Advice, I think it's been very clear, and I know you've seen. There have been a lot of, especially, let me not talk about this by-election, but the previous one. We've seen a lot of electoral malpractice, especially by UDA. We've seen a lot of injection. And, the sad part is that the money that they use is public purse. Actually, it's money that should be diverted.
Sorry to interject.
Political party, UDA. It's money that is used. the money that they use for campaigns, because they inject
How is it public
serious
money? And I'm sorry to
if
don't
I
lose
did not,
words.
I did not interject you. If I
Yeah,
could speak,
I'm
I
just-
beg, you can ask me after I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah, I did not interject you while you're speaking. There are a lot of injection of money that UDA uses. And you've even had President Ruto speak about the kind of money he even put in Mbere, the state machinery that went to Mbere, and other places that we went. As DCP, we had even fielded a candidate in Banisa. And this is just to show you how we are truly national and moving everywhere. Fielding candidates, giving people an alternative. Because sometimes people vote in the wrong person because they have no alternatives, and we do that. But we've seen even in Banisa, President Ruto, managing our candidates, and they took them.
How?
He was called to State House, and he was given some money. He took that option.
Your candidate, the DCP candidate, was called to State House.
Yeah.
He went to State House with his 2 legs,
Yeah.
not shackled by anybody.
No.
Sat down and had a conversation, and according to what you're saying, received money,
Yes.
and then changed his position.
Actually, he stepped down.
Yeah,
He didn't
exact
vie.
change- yeah, he didn't vie.
He stepped down. You see, there's been intentional, and this is a political party. It's competition. So UDA has the upper hand because it has, state machinery, state power, resources, and this is competition, and they should do that. And I want to say,
Should they?
they shouldn't actually.
Okay.
By the way. They shouldn't.
Yes, we can.
But
Should they actually
they shouldn't
stay
do that.
real?
But for them to win, that's what they are doing. So according to them, they justify we need to win. Like advice, advice will put it. You see, UDA is winning because people are listening to them more. That's what they want. That's their end goal.
So what you're saying, I'm sorry, so that we can move this.
Okay.
Advice says, based on your formula, that UDA is winning by elections because the people are listening to what it is that they're saying. People are moving towards ideology. What you're saying is that the reason why it would appear as though UDA is being listened to in these areas is because there is the employment of state machinery and resources to convince people of their position. Can we put, today is the day of numbers, can we put numbers to that and say that the reason why we see winning, because we've got to be objective, as much as the subjective matters, we've got to be objective here and say, can we, because this is all formulaic, can we say the reason why there is a greater percentage of wins, representation, is because there's money changing hands, there is employment of state resources and state machinery. Maybe the example that you give of your candidate who left and went to the House on the Hill and came back and was somebody totally different. Can we connect the two and say the wins are equal to the employment of state resources and machinery, and that's why UDA is winning?
I will say yes. I agree with you. And also,
Oh, no, I'm asking a question.
Yes.
I'm not making. I'm asking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And number 2 also is that we look at Kenyans today. We have hungry households. Every other day, I have to be invited for a harambe because people are sick. Healthcare is not working. So people are just, have been put in that place so that we can depend on handouts and cash drops. And we've seen this is a regime of handouts and cash drops. We've seen staged empowerment programs just to make themselves popular. I wish they would make systems work. If systems work, then then Kenyans get to benefit more. Today we have interns, teachers who are interns. They have stayed as interns for the longest time, and they've gone to court, and it's illegal. State should even actually employ them. So Kenyans are being put at this disadvantaged place so that they can expect handouts and cash drops, and that's where, when you have by-elections, UDA will win because that's what the money that should be facilitating our systems in Kenya, that's where they use them. So it disadvantages a lot of political parties, especially DCP, because we are among the strongest opposition parties. But I agree that we have to continue And we do this, and that's why we come to shows and we're on rallies on ground, because we try to explain to people how we're going to solve a lot of issues in Kenya. But there are things that were working, like NHIF was working, and that's why we say we want to reset. Because NHIF was working, HELB was working, the new funding model is not working.
Well,
that's why we are resetting, and it's important that we speak about our policies, and those are things that we shall share on our websites, on our social media, because it is hard to explain policy on top of rallies.
Of course, there will be time to unveil the manifestos,
Yeah.
and that will come. People will interrogate the ideas and see how well
Yeah.
they're able to relate with them. And then we see how they play out. But in the meantime, we have an upcoming by-election in July 15th, 16th. They're in about 2 months. How do you call it? Number 2, is your party leader still a member of UDA?
No, he's no longer party leader.
He's not a member of any party.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
Please,
you can't speak on his behalf.
Can I respond?
I am his
Advice.
official party official. He is
Let's
not
hear
a member
the
of the
unofficial, then we come to the official.
Yeah.
Yes.
Once impeached, you cannot be a member. You cannot be able to serve in public office. Political party leadership in Kenya is
For a period of time.
Yes,
Yeah,
for a period of time,
of
until
time.
that impeachment
Yeah.
is nullified. Now, political party law in Kenya recognizes political party leaders as public officers. Like, she is a public officer, and therefore, following the impeachment, just the same way Rigathi is not deputy president and cannot be able to run until the impeachment is overturned, he actually cannot be party leader of any political party. But be that as may, I want to again go back to her argument that state machinery was used, and that is why they lost elections. If the argument is as such, then they'll still lose the election in 2027 because the state will still be here. The state is going nowhere. So that argument is always counterproductive on itself. And then the question is always, where was this? Where state machinery had not disappeared in Emurua Dikir when they are now celebrating 30% penetration. There was still state machinery. State machinery had not disappeared in a ward in Kakamega that I forget the name, where they won the election. Kisa East. A ward is in fact the smallest unit, which is easy to actually interfere with because those are just 4,000 voters. So if it is a matter of state machinery, they are not even supposed to be having that ward in the first place. So the truth is, the better person who is organized for an election will win the election. All these other things, and I told you in my beginning that politicians will never run out of excuses why they lost. I was in government when we were losing by-elections, and we came up with an explanation. We told our people that, you see what, we want to fool Ruto so that he keeps winning these by-elections and then surprise him at the election.
So you were lying.
You were lying to the people.
How do you call
the truth is, we were actually just lying and misleading the public. The truth is, we had just lost the election. That is the truth today. I always argue that politics is very simple, and what you see is what you get. When the person leading by-elections today is UDA, be prepared that they will still win the general election. It is just as simple as that. And now, when you come to the question of us speaking from both ends of our mouth, which I hear and do being very categorical with, because on one end, we can't be saying that there is growth in the thinking patterns of the people, and then also on the other end, say they have been bribed. Sometimes that is insulting the intelligence of the very voter we are talking about. Because if everyone, a person who was your candidate, the moment they change their mind, you accuse them of being bought. The people who go to the ballot to vote, the moment they vote against you, you again accuse them of being bought. It can't be like that all through. And I've always been passionate about this because I was in government at that time.
But are they not bought?
You see, the question of being bought is a question that you must be able to bring when you have empirical evidence. Politics is the art of persuasion. She can persuade me today to join DCP. She doesn't need necessarily to buy me. It's a matter of persuasion. The moment we are on this show, Kenyans are listening to us. They are persuaded by the things that we say. Just because they have joined one side or some people have left government and gone the other side, it doesn't mean they have been bought. Who bought Irungu Kangata recently? It is not always a question of being bought. And so people should be able to understand that politics is the art of persuasion. And the quickest way you start losing election is when, instead of fixing the problem, you run to mudslinging and trying to box the people who are doing better than you into a certain cage. That is the quickest way you always start to lose election. And again, I repeat, saying NHIF was not working is not an ideology. Saying that NHIF was working is not an ideology. Saying that you need us to go back to systems that were is not a political ideology. Because you cannot run on the basis of we are going to take the country back to where it was.
All right.
In
And
the
I don't
interest
think
of time, the
that
official
those were
position as we move on.
ideologies. Those were
Those are opinions.
our political party has ideologies. We want us to discuss our political
We
party.
don't have time for that now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Maybe
but
just
those
one.
are not
No,
ideologies.
we don't have time for that
As you
now.
wrap up,
Yeah,
you have to give
But
an official
yes,
position.
I want to say this,
Yeah.
and by-elections are very, very interesting because it's usually a political party fight. And advice saying that because UDA has been leading by-elections, it will win in 2027. I want to say this. In 2027, kila mtu atakuwa kwake. Everyone will be fighting for their own constituency, governor, what. So you see the resources, human resource, money, everything, it won't be concentrated in one place. It will be spread. And that's why UD has been winning, because they come to one place, they pour all the resources, and they do have it because they are the ones who are in government today. So in 2027, it will be spread thin.
Okay.
And DCP will have now fair competition because as DCP, we are new. We don't draw funds from the political parties fund.
Yeah.
That's why you can see, even in Morwa, we couldn't be able to facilitate kila mtu na kofia. It is we have very thin resources, but we do our best with what we have.
You're
All right.
saying about
So,
your
and
party
our political
leader's
party
membership.
He's not a member of UDA. He resigned. He even shared his resignation.
Yeah.
He's not a member of UDA. So
Okay.
Is he a member of DCP?
All
Yes.
to watch. All
he
to
is
watch.
he's a member.
Wajiko Figure is the DCP National Youth Leader, Advice Mundalo, Leadership and Communication Specialist. Thank you for being here this morning. All of these things are things to watch. Ideology-based, whether the state machinery is being used, what it's going to look like in 2027 might shock everybody. Have a look at all of this and see. Thank you for being part of this conversation. Good morning at 9 a.m.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spike. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day.